The rental car's GPS had stopped working 20 miles ago, leaving Emma Rodriguez to navigate the winding mountain roads of Wyoming with nothing but a hand-drawn map from the gas station attendant. Her designer heels were completely impractical for this terrain, her tailored business suit felt ridiculous against the backdrop of endless sky and rugged peaks, and her phone had lost signal an hour ago. "What were you thinking, Aunt Margaret?" Emma muttered, gripping the steering wheel as she navigated another hairpin turn. She barely remembered her great-aunt Margaret, a woman who had appeared at family gatherings like a ghost from another world, smelling of horses and wearing clothes that looked like they belonged in a Western movie. Margaret had been her grandmother's sister, the black sheep who had run away to Wyoming in the 1960s and never looked back. Now, somehow, Emma had inherited her ranch. The Broken Arrow Ranch appeared around the final bend like something out of a postcard. A weathered log cabin sat nestled against a backdrop of towering pines, with a red barn and several outbuildings scattered across the property. Mountains rose on all sides, their peaks still capped with snow despite the late spring weather. Emma parked next to the cabin and stepped out, her heels immediately sinking into the soft earth. The silence was overwhelming, no traffic, no sirens, no city sounds at all. Just wind through the trees and the distant sound of running water. She pulled out the key the lawyer had given her and approached the front door. The cabin was larger than it had appeared from the road, with a wraparound porch and windows that looked out over a meadow where wildflowers were just beginning to bloom. Inside, the cabin was rustic but comfortable. Heavy wooden furniture, a stone fireplace, and walls covered with photographs of horses and mountain landscapes. Everything was clean and well-maintained, as if Margaret had just stepped out for a moment. Emma found a folder on the kitchen table labeled "For Emma," in her aunt's spidery handwriting. Inside were property deeds, insurance papers, and a letter. "Dear Emma, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're probably wondering why I left you this place. The truth is, you're the only one in the family who ever looked at me like I wasn't crazy for choosing this life. You were just a little girl, but I saw something in your eyes, a wildness that your city life hasn't quite tamed yet. Maybe this place will help you find it again. The ranch is yours to do with as you please, but I hope you'll give it a chance before you decide. There's magic in these mountains, child. Let them work on you. Love, Aunt Margaret. Piz Cole knows the land better than anyone. Trust him." Emma frowned at the postscript. Who was Cole? Her question was answered an hour later when she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching the cabin. Through the window, she saw a man on horseback emerging from the tree line. Even from a distance, there was something commanding about his presence. The way he sat in the saddle like he'd been born there, the easy confidence of his movements. He dismounted near the porch and Emma got her first clear look at him. Tall and lean, with dark hair that curled slightly at the edges and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore faded jeans, worn boots, and a black cowboy hat that shadowed his face. There was something almost dangerous about him, a wildness that matched the untamed landscape around them. Emma opened the front door before he could knock. "You must be Emma," he said, his voice deep and rough like whiskey over gravel. "I'm Cole Blackwood. I worked for your aunt." "Worked for her how?" Emma asked, stepping onto the porch. Up close, Cole was even more imposing. He had the kind of presence that seemed to fill all the available space. "I managed the cattle, maintained the property, kept an eye on things." His gray eyes studied her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. "Margaret mentioned she had a niece in New York. Lawyer, right?" "Yes. And I'm here to sell the property." Emma crossed her arms, trying to project the same confidence she used in boardrooms. "I assume you'll need time to find other employment." Something flickered in Cole's eyes. Amusement, maybe, or challenge. "Sell it to who?" "Nearest neighbor is 15 miles away, and most folks around here can't afford a spread this size." "I'll find a buyer. There are always developers looking for mountain property." Cole's expression darkened. "Developers? You want to turn this into some resort for city folks who think they can buy a piece of the wilderness. What I do with my property is my business, Mr. Blackwood." "Your property." He stepped closer, and Emma caught a scent that was purely masculine, leather and pine and something indefinably wild. "You've been here all of 2 hours. What do you know about this place?" "I know it's worth a considerable amount of money, and I have a life in New York that I need to get back to." Cole studied her for a long moment, his gaze traveling from her impractical shoes to her perfectly styled hair. "Margaret said you might say that. She also said you might surprise yourself if you stayed long enough to really see this place. My aunt was a romantic. I'm a realist. We'll see." Cole touched the brim of his hat. "I'll be around if you need anything. Cabin's about 3 miles up the mountain." He gestured toward a barely visible trail that disappeared into the trees. Wait, Emma called as he turned to leave. The letter mentioned you know the land. I'll need someone to show me the property boundaries, help me assess what's here. Cole paused, 1 foot in the stirrup. That'll take a few days. You planning to stay that long? As long as it takes to get this place ready to sell. He swung into the saddle with fluid grace. Careful what you wish for, city girl. These mountains have a way of changing people's plans. As he rode away, Emma felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. There was something about Cole Blackwood that unsettled her, not in a threatening way, but in a way that made her hyper-aware of herself, of the space between them, of the way his eyes had lingered on her face. She shook her head, annoyed with herself. She was here to do a job, not to get distracted by some mysterious cowboy with an attitude problem. That evening, as Emma sat on the porch with a glass of wine she'd found in Margaret's kitchen, she watched the sun set behind the mountains. The sky turned brilliant shades of orange and pink, and the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. For the first time in months, Emma felt her shoulders relax. The constant tension she carried from her high-pressure job seemed to ease in the mountain air. Maybe she could understand why Margaret had chosen this life. But that didn't mean she was going to make the same choice. She had worked too hard to build her career, to prove herself in a male-dominated field, to throw it all away for a romantic fantasy. A sound from the barn caught her attention, a low whinnying that suggested she wasn't alone on the property. Emma grabbed a flashlight and made her way across the yard, her heels clicking on the wooden planks of the barn door. Inside she found 3 horses in stalls, along with feed and water that looked fresh. Someone had been taking care of them. Beautiful, aren't they? Emma spun around to find Cole standing in the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the starlit sky. You scared me, she said, her heart racing. What are you doing here? Checking on the horses. I've been taking care of them since Margaret got sick. He stepped into the barn, moving with that same fluid grace she'd noticed earlier. This is Sage, he said, stopping at the first stall. Margaret's favorite. She's getting old, but she's still got spirit. Emma approached cautiously. The mare was a beautiful chestnut with intelligent brown eyes. When Emma reached out tentatively, Sage nuzzled her palm. She likes you, Cole observed. Horses are good judges of character. I don't know anything about horses. Margaret didn't either when she first came here. But she learned. Cole's voice was softer now, less challenging. She was a remarkable woman. Tougher than she looked. You cared about her. She gave me a chance when no one else would. There was something in his voice, a hint of pain, of secrets. This place, it saved my life. Emma wanted to ask what he meant, but something in his expression warned her off. Instead she said, I'm sorry for your loss. It must be hard losing someone who meant so much to you. Cole nodded, his jaw tight. She knew she was dying. Lung cancer. She spent her last months making sure everything was taken care of. The horses, the land, you. Me? She talked about you a lot. Said you were brilliant but lost. Said you'd forgotten who you really were underneath all that city polish. Emma bristled. She didn't know me. We barely spoke. Maybe. Or maybe she saw something you don't see yourself. Cole moved to the next stall, where a black stallion tossed his head restlessly. This is Thunder. He's got a temper, but he's loyal once you earn his trust. Like his owner? The words slipped out before Emma could stop them. Cole's eyes met hers across the dim barn, and Emma felt that flutter in her chest again. There was something magnetic about him, something that drew her in despite her better judgment. I should go, she said quickly. Early day tomorrow. Emma. Her name on his lips sounded different somehow, rougher, more intimate. Be careful walking back in those shoes. Mountain ground's not forgiving. As she made her way back to the cabin, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Cole Blackwood was watching her. And despite herself, she couldn't shake the wish that he was. That night, she lay in Margaret's bed listening to sounds she'd never heard before. The hoot of an owl, the rustle of wind through pine trees, the distant howl of a coyote. It should have been peaceful, but Emma found herself wide awake, her mind racing. She thought about Cole's words. These mountains have a way of changing people's plans. Emma Rodriguez was not a woman who changed her plans. She was methodical, practical, goal-oriented. She had a corner office in Manhattan, a partnership track at one of the city's most prestigious law firms, and a 5-year plan that didn't include mysterious cowboys or mountain ranches. But as she finally drifted off to sleep, her last thought was of storm-gray eyes and a voice like whiskey over gravel saying her name. Emma woke to a world transformed. During the night, an unexpected spring snowstorm had blanketed the ranch in 2 feet of pristine white. The mountains, already imposing, now looked like something from a fairy tale, beautiful and completely impassable. She tried her phone first, hoping for a signal, but found nothing. The landline in the kitchen was dead too. When she looked out the window toward the main road, she could barely make out where it had been. The snow was still falling heavily, showing no signs of stopping. A knock at the door interrupted her growing panic. She opened it to find Cole standing on the porch, snow dusting his black hat and shoulders. He looked completely unfazed by the weather. "Storm's going to last at least 3 days," he said without preamble. "Maybe longer. Roads completely blocked." 3 days. Emma's voice pitched higher than she intended. "I have a deposition on Friday. I have to be back in New York." "Not happening." Cole stepped inside without invitation, bringing the scent of snow and pine with him. "This is a real mountain storm, not the kind of weather city folks are used to. You're stuck here until it passes and the county can get the plows through." Emma stared at him, her mind racing through the implications. There has to be something, a helicopter, a snowmobile. In this weather? You'd be risking your life for a court date. Cole's gray eyes were serious. "I know it's not what you planned, but sometimes the mountains decide for you. This is ridiculous. It's May. Welcome to Wyoming." Cole moved to the fireplace and began building a fire with practiced efficiency. "Good news is Margaret kept the cabin well stocked. You won't starve or freeze." "What about you? Don't you need to get back to your cabin?" Cole paused in his fire building. "My place is even more cut off than this one. If it's all right with you, I'll stay in the barn. Keep an eye on the horses and make sure you don't do anything dangerous." "Dangerous like what?" "Like trying to hike out in a blizzard because you're too stubborn to accept that nature doesn't care about your schedule." Emma wanted to argue, but the rational part of her mind knew he was right. She was trapped here with him for the next 3 days. The thought should have been alarming. Instead, she felt a flutter of something that might have been anticipation. "Fine," she said. "But I have work to do. I'll need to use Margaret's computer to access my files remotely. Assuming the internet's working. Power's been flickering all morning." As if summoned by his words, the lights went out. They sat in the sudden darkness for a moment, the only sound the crackling of the fire Cole had just lit. Then Emma heard his low chuckle. "Something funny?" she asked. "Just thinking about what Margaret would say if she could see this. She always said the mountains would find a way to slow you down. You think she planned this somehow?" Margaret was smart, but she wasn't a weather witch. Cole's voice was warm with amusement. Though she did always say timing was everything. The fire provided enough light for them to move around the cabin. Cole seemed to know where everything was: candles, oil lamps, extra blankets. He moved through Margaret's space with the familiarity of someone who had spent a lot of time there. "How long did you work for my aunt?" Emma asked as they settled in the living room, the fire casting dancing shadows on the walls. "About 5 years. Since I came to Wyoming." "Where were you before that?" Cole's expression shuddered. "Somewhere else." Emma recognized the deflection. She used similar tactics when clients asked questions she didn't want to answer. But his evasiveness only made her more curious. "Margaret's letter said to trust you. That you know the land better than anyone." "I do. But you won't tell me where you came from or why you're here." Cole leaned back in his chair, his gray eyes reflecting the firelight. "Some stories aren't mine to tell. Some pasts are better left buried." "That sounds ominous." "Not ominous. Just private." He stood and moved to the window, looking out at the swirling snow. "Everyone's got things they'd rather forget. I'm guessing you do too." Emma thought about her last relationship, a fellow lawyer who had cheated on her with his secretary, then had the audacity to suggest it was her fault for being too focused on work. She thought about the partners at her firm who still questioned whether she was tough enough for the big cases, despite her track record. She thought about the constant pressure to prove herself, to be better than good enough. "Maybe," she admitted. Cole turned back to her, and something in his expression had softened. "The difference is, out here none of that matters. The mountains don't care about your past mistakes or your future plans. They just are." That's very philosophical for a cowboy. I read a lot during the long winters. As the day wore on, Emma found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't in years. Without her phone, her laptop, or any connection to the outside world, she had no choice but to be present. Cole proved to be surprisingly good company, intelligent, well-read, and possessed of a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. They cooked dinner together using ingredients from Margaret's well-stocked pantry. Cole moved around the kitchen with the same easy confidence he showed everywhere else, and Emma found herself watching the way his hands worked, strong, capable, gentle when he handled the more delicate tasks. You're staring, he said without looking up from the vegetables he was chopping. Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks. You seem very comfortable here. I spent a lot of time in this kitchen. Margaret liked to cook for people, and I was usually the only person around to feed. Were you lonely? Living up here by yourself? Cole paused in his chopping. Lonely and alone aren't the same thing. I chose to be alone. Lonely, that's different. And were you? Lonely? He looked at her then, his gray eyes intense in the firelight. Sometimes. Less so lately. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something Emma couldn't quite name. She felt drawn to him in a way that was completely foreign to her experience. The men she usually dated were like her. Urban, ambitious, predictable. Cole was none of those things. After dinner, they sat by the fire with glasses of Margaret's whiskey. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the cabin felt warm and safe, like a cocoon separate from the rest of the world. Tell me about your life in New York, Cole said. Emma found herself talking about her work, her apartment overlooking Central Park, her carefully planned career trajectory. But as she spoke, it all sounded hollow somehow, like she was describing someone else's life. Sounds successful, Cole said when she finished. It is. I've worked very hard to get where I am. But are you happy? The question caught her off guard. Happy? I'm successful. I'm respected. I make good money. That's not what I asked. Emma stared into the fire, considering. When was the last time she'd been truly happy? Not satisfied with an accomplishment or pleased with a victory in court, but genuinely, deeply happy? I don't think about happiness much, she said finally. I think about goals, achievements, the next step up the ladder. Margaret used to say that happiness wasn't a destination. It was a way of traveling. More philosophy? More truth. Cole leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. What did you want to be when you were little? Before you decided to conquer the legal world? Emma smiled despite herself. A veterinarian. I wanted to take care of animals, travel to different countries, maybe work for the Peace Corps. What happened to that dream? Reality. My parents convinced me that law was more practical, more prestigious. Better money, better security. And now? Now I'm a successful attorney who hasn't touched an animal in 15 years. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Sage has been limping a little. Nothing serious, but she could use someone to check her hoof, maybe wrap it if needed. I told you, I don't know anything about horses. But you wanted to be a vet once. Some instincts don't go away. Emma looked at him suspiciously. Are you manipulating me, Mr. Blackwood? Maybe a little. His smile was devastating. Is it working? Despite herself, Emma laughed. We'll see. As the evening wore on, they moved closer together on the couch, drawn by the warmth of the fire and something else, an attraction that was becoming harder to ignore. Emma found herself studying the strong line of Cole's jaw, the way his hair curled at the nape of his neck, the calluses on his hands that spoke of hard work and honest labor. When he caught her looking, he didn't look away. Instead, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. Emma, he said, her name rough on his lips. This is crazy, she whispered. I don't even know you. You know enough. Do I? I don't know where you came from, what you're running from, why you're really here. Cole's hand dropped away and Emma immediately missed the warmth of his touch. Some things are better left in the past, he said. And some things need to be faced. They stared at each other across the small space between them, the tension crackling like the fire. Emma felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to jump into something that would change everything. Before she could lose her nerve, she leaned forward and kissed him. Cole went very still for a moment, then his arms came around her, pulling her closer. The kiss was everything Emma had imagined and more, hungry, desperate, full of a passion she'd never experienced before. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. This complicates things, he said. Everything's already complicated. Emma, there are things about me. She silenced him with another kiss. I don't care about your past. I care about right now. Cole pulled back to look at her, his gray eyes searching her face. Right now, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, sitting in front of a fire in the middle of a snowstorm, and I want you more than I've ever wanted anything. Then stop talking, Emma whispered. Cole's response was to lift her into his arms and carry her toward the bedroom, the storm forgotten, the outside world forgotten, everything forgotten except the heat building between them and the promise of a night that would change everything. Emma woke to the sound of horses whinnying in distress. The storm had intensified during the night, and through the bedroom window she could see the barn door swinging wildly in the wind. Cole was already pulling on his clothes, his face grim. "Something's wrong," he said, grabbing his coat. "Stay inside. I'm coming with you." Emma was already reaching for her clothes. "Emma, it's dangerous out there. Those are my horses now, and I'm not staying inside while they're in trouble." Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but there wasn't time. Together, they fought their way through the blizzard to the barn, the wind so strong it nearly knocked Emma off her feet. Cole's arm around her waist was the only thing keeping her upright. Inside the barn they found chaos. A tree branch had crashed through part of the roof and snow was pouring in. Thunder, the black stallion, was rearing in his stall, terrified by the noise and the storm. Sage was down in her stall, clearly in pain. "The roof beam shifted when the branch came through," Cole shouted over the wind. "It's putting pressure on Sage's stall. We need to get her out of there before the whole thing comes down." Emma looked at the injured mare and something inside her clicked into place. All her childhood dreams of being a veterinarian, all the instincts she'd buried under years of legal briefs and court cases, came rushing back. "She's hurt," Emma said, moving toward Sage's stall. "Her leg, I think it might be broken." "Emma, don't." But Emma was already in the stall, her hands gentle on Sage's neck, her voice soft and soothing. The mare calmed under her touch, and Emma was able to examine the injury. "It's not broken," she said with relief. "But she's got a deep cut and she's in shock. We need to get her somewhere warm and dry." Working together, they managed to move Sage to an undamaged stall. Emma found herself taking charge, directing Cole as they improvised a shelter from the storm and tended to the mare's wounds. Her hands seemed to remember skills she'd never actually learned, guided by instinct and a deep connection to the injured animal. "Where did you learn to do that?" Cole asked as Emma finished bandaging Sage's leg. "I don't know. It just felt right." Cole looked at her with something like wonder. Margaret always said this place brought out people's true selves. As they worked to secure the barn against the storm, Emma felt more alive than she had in years. This was real, immediate, important in a way that her corporate law practice had never been. She was using her hands, her instincts, her heart. They were heading back to the cabin when disaster struck. A massive pine tree, weakened by the storm, began to fall directly toward them. Cole saw it first and threw himself at Emma, knocking her out of the way. The tree crashed down inches from where they'd been standing, but Cole didn't get up. "Cole." Emma scrambled to where he lay pinned under a large branch, blood seeping from a gash on his forehead. "Cole, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Emma, are you hurt?" "I'm fine. You saved me." She tried to lift the branch, but it was too heavy. "I need to get you inside. Get help?" "No hospitals," Cole said urgently, grabbing her wrist. "Promise me. No hospitals, no doctors. Cole, you might have a concussion. You need medical attention. Promise me." His grip was surprisingly strong for someone who'd just been knocked unconscious. "Please." Emma stared at him, seeing the desperation in his gray eyes. Whatever he was running from, it was serious enough that he'd rather risk his life than seek proper medical help. "Okay," she said. "I promise. But we need to get you inside." It took all of Emma's strength to drag Cole to the cabin. Once inside, she cleaned his wounds and checked for signs of serious injury. The head wound looked worse than it was, but she was worried about internal injuries, about what she might not be able to see. As she tended to him, Cole drifted in and out of consciousness, and in his delirium he began to talk. "Had to leave," he mumbled. "Couldn't stay. They would have killed me." "Who would have killed you?" Emma asked gently. "The Morettas. Saw too much. Knew too much." His eyes opened, suddenly lucid. "Emma, if anything happens to me, there's a box hidden under the floorboards in my cabin. Take it to the FBI. Agent Sarah Chin in Denver. She'll know what to do." "Cole, you're scaring me." "What are you talking about?" But he'd lost consciousness again, leaving Emma with more questions than answers. She spent the night watching over him, checking his pupils, monitoring his breathing. As dawn broke and the storm finally began to subside, Cole's fever broke and he woke up fully alert. "How long was I out?" he asked. "About 12 hours. You were delirious, talking about people named Moretti and an FBI agent." Cole's face went pale. "What exactly did I say?" Emma repeated his words, watching as his expression grew more and more grim. "Damn," he said finally. "I was hoping I'd never have to tell you this." "Tell me what?" Cole sat up slowly, wincing. "My real name is Cole Blackwood, but 5 years ago I was Detective Cole Morrison with the Chicago PD. I was working undercover, investigating the Moretti crime family. Emma felt the world shift around her. You're a cop. Was a cop. I got too deep, saw things I wasn't supposed to see. When they figured out I was undercover, I had two choices, disappear or die. So you came here. The FBI helped me disappear. New identity, new life. I was supposed to lay low until they could build a case against the Morettis, but that was 5 years ago. The case fell apart, witnesses disappeared, and I've been stuck in limbo ever since. Emma stared at him, trying to process this revelation. So everything you told me about your past was a lie. I'm sorry, Emma. I never meant for you to get involved. But I am involved. I'm involved with you. Cole's expression was pained. That's why this is so complicated. The Morettis have long memories and longer reach. If they ever found out about you, are you in immediate danger? I don't think so. As far as I know, they think I'm dead. But if my cover was ever blown. Emma felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm. Is that why you don't want to go to a hospital? Because they might find you? Partly. Also because I've been living off the grid for 5 years. No insurance, no official medical records. Too many questions. Emma was quiet for a long moment, absorbing everything he'd told her. Finally she said, the FBI agent you mentioned, Sarah Chin. Is she still working your case? As far as I know. Why? Because maybe it's time to stop running? Maybe it's time to finish what you started. Cole shook his head. Emma, you don't understand. These people don't just kill you, they destroy everyone you care about first. I won't put you in that kind of danger. What if you didn't have to? What if there was a way to end this once and for all? There isn't. I've thought about it for 5 years. There's no way out. Emma stood up, pacing to the window. The storm was clearing and she could see blue sky peeking through the clouds. You said you saw things you weren't supposed to see. What kind of things? Emma? What kind of things, Cole? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, murder. I witnessed Vincent Moretti kill a federal judge. I was the only witness and I had it on tape. Had. The tape was destroyed when my cover was blown. Without it, there's no case. Emma turned back to him, her mind racing. But you're still alive. You could testify. My word against theirs? Without corroborating evidence? It would never stick and it would just put a target on both our backs. What if there was other evidence? What if the case could be rebuilt? Cole studied her face. You're thinking like a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. And I'm thinking that 5 years is a long time. People get careless, make mistakes. Maybe there's evidence now that didn't exist then. Emma, this isn't some corporate lawsuit. These people kill for a living. And you're a trained police officer who's been hiding in the mountains for 5 years. Maybe it's time to stop hiding and start fighting back. Cole was quiet for a long moment, and Emma could see the war playing out in his expression. Hope warring with fear, the desire for freedom battling against the instinct for survival. Finally he said, even if we could build a case, even if we could bring down the Morettis, what then? What happens to us? Emma felt her heart skip a beat at the word, us. I don't know. But I know I can't go back to my old life pretending this never happened. Pretending you never happened. Emma? Last night changed everything for me, Cole. Not just the physical part but everything. I felt more alive in that barn taking care of Sage than I have in years of practicing law. I felt more myself with you than I ever have with anyone. Cole reached for her hand. And I felt more human in the past few days than I have in 5 years. But wanting something and being able to have it are two different things. Maybe. Or maybe it's time to stop letting fear make our decisions for us. Outside, the storm was clearing, and Emma could hear the distant sound of snowplows on the main road. Soon the outside world would intrude again, and they would have to make choices about their future. But for now, in this moment, Emma made a decision that would change everything. When we get out of here, she said, I'm calling Agent Chin. It's time to finish this. Cole's grip on her hand tightened. Emma, if we do this, there's no going back. Once we start down this path. I know. Emma leaned down and kissed him, soft and sure. But I'd rather face the danger with you than live safely without you. As the sun broke through the clouds, casting the snow-covered ranch in brilliant light, Emma realized that Margaret had been right about one thing. The mountains did have a way of changing people's plans. She'd come here to sell a ranch and get back to her orderly life in New York. Instead, she'd found love, purpose, and a fight worth having. Now all she had to do was survive it. 3 weeks later, Emma stood in the conference room of the FBI field office in Denver, watching Agent Sarah Chin review the evidence they'd compiled. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of investigation, legal maneuvering and careful planning. Emma had taken a leave of absence from her firm, officially for personal reasons, but really to help build the case that would finally bring down the Moretti crime family. "This is impressive work," Agent Chin said, looking up from the files spread across the table. "In 3 weeks, you've uncovered more usable evidence than we found in 2 years of investigation." Emma glanced at Cole, who stood by the window watching the street below. Even here, in the heart of a federal building, he remained alert, watchful. 5 years of looking over his shoulder had left their mark. "Emma's good at what she does," Cole said without turning around. "She sees connections other people miss." "The financial records were the key," Emma explained. "The Morettis got sloppy after they thought Cole was dead. They started using legitimate businesses to launder money, but they left a paper trail. Cross-reference that with the witness statements we've gathered, and we have a solid RICO case." Agent Chin nodded. "Solid enough to get indictments. The question is, are you both prepared for what comes next? Once we move on this, there's no going back. The Morettis will know Cole is alive, and they'll know you're involved, Emma." "We're ready," Emma said firmly. Cole finally turned from the window. "Are we?" "Emma, you still have time to walk away from this. Go back to New York, back to your life. You don't have to." "Stop." Emma stood up, facing him across the conference room. "We've been through this. I'm not walking away. You don't understand what you're giving up. Your career, your safety, your entire life. My life was empty before I met you." The words came out more forcefully than Emma had intended, but she didn't regret them. "I was successful, yes, but I wasn't living. I was just existing." Agent Chin cleared her throat. "If I could interrupt this touching moment, we need to discuss logistics. The raids are scheduled for tomorrow morning. We'll be hitting 5 locations simultaneously: the Moretti compound, their restaurant front, the shipping warehouse, and 2 private residences." "What about protection for Emma?" Cole asked. "She'll be in protective custody until the trials are over. Both of you will." Emma shook her head. "I'm not hiding. If I'm going to testify, I want to be visible. I want them to know I'm not afraid." "Emma," Cole started. "No. I've spent my whole life playing it safe, following the rules, staying in my lane. I'm done with that." She turned to Agent Chin. "What do you need from me?" "Your testimony about the financial evidence, for starters." "But Emma," Cole's right to be concerned. "These people don't play by the rules." "Neither do I. Not anymore." That evening, Emma and Cole returned to the ranch. The past 3 weeks had transformed the property. What had once felt like a temporary stop on Emma's way back to her real life now felt like home. She'd hired contractors to repair the barn, had the cabin's internet upgraded, and had even started making plans for expanding the horse operation. "Having second thoughts?" Cole asked as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. "About the case? No. About us? Never." Emma turned to face him. "Are you?" Cole was quiet for a moment. "I keep thinking about what my life was like before you came here. I was just surviving. Going through the motions. I'd forgotten what it felt like to want something, to hope for something. And now I want everything. I want a future with you, a real life, not just existence in hiding." He took her hand. "But I'm terrified of losing it. Of losing you." "You won't lose me. You can't promise that. Tomorrow, when this all starts, everything changes. We'll be in the spotlight, under protection, living with the constant threat that someone might try to hurt us." Emma stood up and moved to the porch railing, looking out over the land that had become so precious to her. "Do you know what I realized these past few weeks?" "What?" "I've been afraid my whole life. Afraid of not being good enough, afraid of taking risks, afraid of wanting too much." She turned back to him. "But the scariest thing I ever did was also the best thing I ever did." "Which was?" "Falling in love with you." Cole stood and moved to her, his hands framing her face. "Emma, let me finish. I know tomorrow is going to be dangerous. I know we're taking a huge risk. But I'd rather have one day of real life with you than a lifetime of safety without you." Cole's response was to kiss her, deep and desperate, as if he could somehow protect her through the sheer force of his love. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. Then trust me. Trust us. We're going to get through this." "And then what?" "Assuming we survive, assuming the case goes well, what happens to us?" Emma smiled. "Then we build the life we want. Here on this ranch. We raise horses, maybe some cattle. I'll practice law part-time, handle cases for people who can't afford big city lawyers. You can What do you want to do? I want to be a rancher. A real one. I want to wake up every morning next to you and go to sleep every night knowing you're safe and happy. That sounds perfect. Does it? Even if it means giving up your partnership track? Your corner office? Your life in New York? Emma looked around at the mountains, the endless sky, the land that had somehow claimed her heart. I never wanted any of those things for themselves. I wanted them because I thought they would make me happy, make me feel successful, make me feel worthy. But I felt more worthy in the past month than I ever did in 10 years of practicing corporate law. Cole pulled her closer. Margaret would be proud of you. She always said this place had a way of showing people who they really were. And who am I? You're brave, brilliant, compassionate. You're a woman who gave up everything she thought she wanted for something she knew was right. Cole's voice grew rough with emotion. You're the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with. Is that a proposal, Detective Morrison? Cole grinned, the first truly carefree smile she'd seen from him. Maybe. Would you say yes if it was? Try me and find out. Cole dropped to one knee right there on the porch, taking her hands in his. Emma Rodriguez, you came into my life like a force of nature and turned everything upside down. You made me remember what it felt like to hope, to dream, to want a future. Will you marry me? Yes, Emma said without hesitation. Yes, absolutely yes. As Cole stood and swept her into his arms, Emma felt a completeness she'd never experienced before. This wasn't the safe, predictable life she'd planned, but it was real and honest and hers. Now you're mine, Cole whispered against her ear, echoing the words he'd said the night of the storm. And you're mine, Emma whispered back. Forever. The next morning, as FBI agents swarmed the Moretti properties across 3 states, Emma and Cole stood together in the federal courthouse, ready to face whatever came next. The case would be long and difficult, the trials dangerous and public. But they would face it together. 6 months later, Vincent Moretti and 12 members of his organization were convicted on federal racketeering charges. Cole's testimony, combined with Emma's financial evidence and the testimony of other witnesses who finally felt safe to come forward, had built an unshakable case. The day after the verdicts were announced, Emma and Cole were married in a small ceremony at the ranch, surrounded by their new friends from Cedar Ridge and the FBI agents who had become like family during the long months of trials. As they danced to their first song as husband and wife, with the Rocky Mountains as their backdrop and the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky, Emma marveled at how much her life had changed. A year ago, she'd been a successful but lonely lawyer in New York, focused on climbing the corporate ladder and accumulating achievements that felt hollow. Now she was a rancher's wife, a part-time attorney who specialized in helping people who couldn't help themselves, and the happiest she'd ever been. Any regrets? Cole asked as they swayed together on the makeshift dance floor they'd set up in the barn. Emma looked around at their guests, Agent Chin, who had become a close friend, Betty and Tom Henderson from the general store, the neighbors who had welcomed her into their community, the horses grazing peacefully in the pasture beyond the barn doors. Only one, she said. Cole's expression grew concerned. What? I regret that it took me so long to find my way here. To find you. Cole's smile was radiant. Well, you're here now. And I'm never letting you go. Promise? I promise. You're mine now, Emma Blackwood. Forever. As the music played and the mountains stood sentinel around them, Emma knew that she had found something more precious than any corner office or partnership track. She had found home. Not just a place but a person who saw her for who she truly was and loved her completely. The mysterious mountain cowboy had kept his promise. She would never be alone again. And in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains, under a sky full of stars, Emma and Cole began the greatest adventure of all. A lifetime of love, built on trust, tested by fire, and strong enough to weather any storm. The girl who had come to Wyoming to sell a ranch and return to her safe, predictable life had instead found her true calling, her perfect match, and her forever home. Sometimes the best plans were the ones you never made. Sometimes the greatest risks led to the greatest rewards. And sometimes, in the most unexpected places, you found exactly what you never knew you were looking for.